Hello everyone, welcome to a new tier list update for the refined priority tier list, and this time we'll be talking about Luke, Disappointment, Ray, and Matthew. Now, as per usual, I'll go from worst to best. Surprising no one, Roderick comes first. Now, Roderick gets a fire sweep weapon that can be refined, and the refine itself is Darting Blow. Ah yes, it is 2019, not 2017. I get that Roderick is one of the least popular unit of this game, but Jesus Christ, man. This is terrible, what the hell? Darting Blow on a fire sweep weapon can be decent, but like no one ever runs that. They tend to run Life and Death. So hey, if that was a fire sweep weapon with Life and Death, I would actually be interested in that. In fact, that could be really strong. Could give him quite a few ways to work as a unit. But instead we get the normal set that you'd always run on this guy because that's just how it works. Because Darting Blow is not great. And as you can see here, why in God's name would you ever consider running Darting Blow if you're going to actually refine him to +10? It's just overall not really worth it, is it? As you can see, you already hit 49 speed. On low merges, that's 45. And guess what? 45 is still too much. Or no, it's not, but it's still very high. Why would you go for Darting Blow on top of that for 51 speed? Just boggles my mind. So the best set I can really think of is just a Moonbow Heavy Blade. Glimmer can also work. Sorry. But if you're going to be using this set, you are not going to use the Refine, and that's why he's actually fairly low on the tier list. Sitting at a wonderful A tier, as you can see. Just overall, not a fantastic refine, which is kind of ironic. I've made refines for everyone on this batch except Roderick, and everyone except Roderick got a good refine. It's yeah, depressing. Depressing is the word. Oh, also, before we continue, I've made Katerina go down from S- to A+ tier, because Ray is just better in every way, doesn't require you to summon 5-star exclusive, has a better stat line for the effect, and just overall, it's just better. So, there's just no point in really making Katerina work, unless you really like her as a unit. Speaking of Ray, guess who's next? Yes, I'm serious here. Genuinely, the second worst unit of Banner is an S-. This weapon is very stacked. It's not the same weapon I've designed for him. I gave him Apocalypse in my Refined Theory Crafting series. If you're curious about what I did there, just watch the video. It's still fairly recent. Point is, this is a dual range weapon which completely shuts down Blade Tomes. That alone is really strong because he's meant to be a tank, and Blade Tomes are extremely dangerous. Now, Dull Close cannot be used on him because ranged unit cannot use the skill, which is kind of weird because melee units can use dull range. But I guess that's just what it is. So yeah, overall he gets an Owl Tome with effective against dead content and a dull range effect. The Owl effect is amazing for him because his best tome before the update was already an Owl Tome on high merges. Blade Tome was also working, but Blade Tome works on literally everyone, so no surprises there. As for the build, here it is. Yeah, if you have just 2 people near you, not 3, 2, because 3 is a bit inconsistent. You're already sitting at 65 attack, 43 speed, 44 def, and 43 res. You have 84 bulk on both defense and 83 on res, with 65-43 as your offense. It is insane. Obviously, No See Disrupt is not the only B skill you can run. Null Follow-Up is also a good option, because Null Follow-Up just absolutely shuts down any kind of bolt fighter and all that, which was one of the reasons why Garnet was so high on my tier list. Spoiler alert, he got down a tier because of Ray's existence, because Ray does exactly the main niche he had, but better. So yeah, just overall, pretty insane. And Close Counter is solid, but if you don't feel like using that, you can run Def Res Bond, or even Brazen Def Res, because you can actually take the hit if required to get in Brazen range pretty easily. Just overall a fantastic unit. However, not really good in A for raids, because Aversa is the constant fucking plague there. Aversa will tend to just absolutely backfire on you, since, you know, Altomes just don't work against her, because Panic, -3 to all stats, it's just not great overall. Still, in every other mode, he's actually fairly formidable when it comes down to being a unit, so yeah, overall a really good weapon. Attack Smoke also is there just to, you know, emphasize his bulk, because at that point, if you can just hit in the pack of a few units and have units around you, that's basically 51 def and 50 res that you have on your unit. That's nasty. That's absolutely nasty. You take so little damage. Soul is there to heal yourself back up, because you don't really need the extra damage from Aether with 65 magic attack. It's just irrelevant at that point. That said, if you genuinely think you'd prefer having a 50% res down, Aether does work just as well. Soul is just more consistent heals. So yeah. Moving on to Matthew, our first S-tier Dagger unit, which has one of the most stacked descriptions this game has ever had, for a very simple effect. It's simple. He lowers def and res of -6 when he attacks, and he buffs himself and his allies by 6 def and res. Now, up to that point, it's just an okay weapon. What makes this so good is the Blizzard effect. On a Dagger unit, Blizzard is insane. I just wish it would also delete attack and speed by an extra 6. Sadly, that is not really the case. That said, if you use something such as Rid, Guntra, Aversa, this weapon becomes disgusting. Now, I'm going to be also speaking about Liliana's Dagger, because Liliana's Dagger is basically the same thing, minus the 6 def and res buff for attacking. And Liliana is a better one-shot unit, obviously. But, and that's the one thing you can do with Liliana, the thing is, Liliana will struggle against blue, Matthew does well against everything. If you have a unit such as Aversa, and you panic someone, even if they only have like 6 attack, and you have Aversa, that's -3 across the board, actually -6 attack, and then -3 across the board. That's literally 18 damage increase for Matthew. So that's 29 attack here, 43 with the weapon, suddenly just jumps to 61 attack. That's without an A skill, that's without a seal, that's without anything. If the enemy is a unit from, say, Azura buffing it to +6 across the board, well, suddenly that becomes 24 extra attack, on top of the 6 def that you just ripped off because it's panicked. Let's add to that maybe some ploys. But just Azura getting the unit around that gets then debuffed is still a plus, essentially 30 attack to Matthew, 24 if you just want the numbers, which is 67 attack. This is disgusting, and honestly, if you're using the unit outside of rally traps, of course, rally traps will always be a problem here, but that's just because they're a problem to literally everyone, then it's gonna do really well. My idea for him to work was to just basically make his def stat his attack stat. So improving his bulk also improved his damage as a result. Still, this is also a really good way to go about it. Blizzard is a fantastic refine for a Dagger unit. Like I said, I just wish he also debuffed attack and speed. That said, it's not like you can't run attack and speed smoke. Now, can't you? So you can actually debuff 6 attack, 7 attack, 7 speed, 6 def, 6 res as a result. And that's without panic. That's without a Versa. Because if you panic someone and they get buffed, those buffs are turned into debuff. Those are also added to the goddamn thing. They stack. Because the buffs that are turned into panics are still considered like a buff, not a debuff. That's why harsh commands doesn't work on them. Because the state is already a panicked state. Therefore, since the state is still around, unless you're using harsh command plus, it's basically like taking, say you have a unit that has -3 attack because of panic and minus 6 attack, I guess, because debuff. Harsh command will just transfer the 6 into a buff, so the -3 you get from the buff becomes a -6. Simple as that. So yeah, overall, if you have something like a Versa panicking and you have like a -6 attack as a result, on top of the -7 attack, on top of the -7 speed, on top of the -6 def, on top of the -6 res, you get where I'm coming from here, right? Obviously, you can do a Vantage set with Matthew of all people. Look at this. At +10, you're at 53 attack. If you attack with attack and speed smoke on top of the Dagger, that's an extra 26 attack. That's 79 attack on Matthew. And then if on top of that you have panics, then he just becomes even more insane. So yeah, Draconic Aura ends up becoming good as a result, because you don't get only 15 damage. Because of the damage you're taking from the enemy debuff, well, typically Draconic Aura is going to do 18 to 21 extra damage. Or, no, 21 to 24, sorry. Despite being a 3 cooldown skill, because unlike Blade Tome, they don't have a cooldown +1 on this weapon. Now, I can already tell a few comments will be just the fact that you're reliant on debuffs, and if there's no debuff to begin with, it can be a struggle. But the thing is, Matthew's stat line is so good that he can actually just inflict the debuff himself, and then just wait on enemy phase with close counter, and suddenly he does still have enough damage. Even with just his Dagger, because he has 85 bulk against defense and 73 against res, he can just straight up attack the unit, take very little damage, and if he does take damage, he's in Vantage range. Suddenly that 53 attack becomes essentially 65 attack, but actually 73 attack because you actually are removing 6 defense on the enemy side. Yeah, let that sink in. And he actually works as a support unit as well because he buffs your allies. That makes him, honestly, a very good Dagger unit. If it wasn't for the fact that it's on Matthew, this refine would genuinely be what I called broken. And Liliana can actually just break the 100 attack with this Dagger. So can Matthew, technically, but it's unlikely. So, moving on to Luke. I already know why Like, I already know comments that are going to be like, why is Luke an S+? Well, let me explain. Now, let me explain this weapon because a lot of people seem to misunderstand how the weapon works and think that Luke needs to be buffed for the effect. That's completely incorrect. As a matter of fact, it requires your foe to not have a buff. Yeah, it's a bit strange, isn't it? Until we realize that you can actually cheese this and make this weapon work all the goddamn time, unless you're attacking specific units, which you would be killing anyway. So, yeah. What is it? Well, it's pretty easy. Dull Close. Yes, Dull Close is actually a really good skill now for a unit. What Dull Close does is it negates buff on the enemy side. I do not know if just having a status effect such as bonus doubler or movement up are considered as buff, but considering they're saying skills like rally or own, it's probably just an active buff. Since you're deleting every active buff, they're screwed, because it just looks in combat whether or not there's a buff or not. Since there's no buff because of Dull Close, Dull Close makes so that this 6 attack 6 death is permanently here. And he also has a decent chunk of attack. Granted, if you're going to go with the route of Eliwood, you want to have something like Life and Death, pushing your attack up to overall 38, which actually allows you to quad also to some extent, which is disgusting in itself. But if you're not, you can still run what I'm running here. Dull Close, like I said, shuts down buff, which means that Rowdy Sword always works, which pushes his attack to 64 and his defense to 46. This effect is a multi-phase effect. It doesn't matter if it's player or enemy phase, you will have 46 defense. The only weakness becomes his speed to some extent, so, you know. That said, if you're going Life and Death with Eliwood as a support, okay? And you have bonus doubler on and every buffs, which is very doable. All you need is a dragon unit, because Arcadia, Visions of Arcadia would buff him across the entire map along with bonus doubler, which means 12 attack and 12 death, by the way. So even if you have Life and Death on you, okay? Which pushes your death down to 35. You have 41 death because of bonus doubler. 41 death and 31 res, so you end up having more death and res as a result. The speed, however, and the attack is where it shines, because you get 5 speed from Life and Death, pushing it to 38. And because of bonus doubler, it's pushed to 44. All of a sudden that becomes a bit disgusting, doesn't it? Your attack is pushed to 69 attack. Oh, sorry, bonus doubler. 75 attack. Yeah. So the only units that this effect would not work on would be ranged units. But how many ranged units are able to face tank 75 attack from a brave goddamn sword? Not many. Really not many. And he has the speed to just have an enemy phase as well? What? Yeah, Luke is very bizarre now, isn't he? But, overall, since he doesn't have the quad potential, Elincia can be better overall if you don't have Eliwood. That said, Luke is still no slouch. With this set, he's sitting at 72 attack. 58 attack, 64 because of Rowdy Sword, and 72 because Death Blow 4. Kinda ridiculous, isn't it? And since the effect is basically just a permanent 6 attack, 6 defense against melee units, as long as you have Dull Close, there's literally no drawback as long as you run Dull Close. Another thing as well is Panic Ploy. Panic Ploy is fantastic on him because the only units that he won't be able to quad are obviously ranged units, but if he transformed the buffs into Panicked buff, well, It's not a bonus anymore, it's a penalty. Therefore, this weapon should still get the 6 attack and 6 defense. And since 50 HP is plenty to panic ploy mage, and to the most extent bow units, yeah, all of a sudden looking pretty goddamn insane, doesn't he? Honestly, it's really funny because Luke basically got owned. That's the best way I can put it. He went from a very underwhelming unit to a unit that's beyond ridiculous in terms of stats. Honestly, you'd be a fool not to really work with him. And the best part is he literally outperforms all if you have Naga. And Naga synergizes with Eliwood. So you can just have Naga giving the dragon effectiveness and Eliwood giving the 6 attack def and other stats if needed. It's so stupid. It's so ridiculous. It's so easy to work with. That's what's insane to me. And the best part is, depending on how you build Naga, you could also try to make their attack match. Because depending on your team, you could also just literally not even use life and death. And still, overall, you know, like Fury 4, for example, could be an option. Fury 4 suddenly pushes your def to 44 and your res to 34. Bonus doubler still procs. 50 defense, 40 res. I repeat, 50 defense and 40 res on Luke. What the hell? And your speed is still 43 as a result. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Your attack goes up to 62. Wait, 64 because of buff, 70 because of Raleigh Sword. Yeah. Oh, and 4 because Fury, so 74 attack, 43 speed, 50 def, and 40 res. I don't know what else to say. This guy is actually genuinely insane now. And this concludes my tier list analysis. So, hey, I suppose that's that. Next up, we'll be talking about Fiora. Right, it took me a while to remember her name. And I can tell you already, Fiora is a lot better than a lot of people think she is. She has competition that actually beats her, but, well, we'll see that in the video. With that said, I'm gonna see you all probably tomorrow, because it's literally midnight here. So have a good night, everyone. See ya.